So, anybody have any questions, any comments? I mean, here we are now. I mean, I was going to say starting 2023, but the year's already 8% over. I mean, right? I mean, we're,
Yikes.
the end of the month, right? So it's like 1/12 of the year is already gone. So,
So fast already.
so how's it going?
Good. Well, okay. It's going good.
Great. I'm doing great.
That's good.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm a happy girl.
Mhm.
Yeah, Jessica was just telling me she got a new job,
I did so.
What?
which is great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Congratulations,
Good
Doing
for
what?
you.
right?
Tell
Thank
us.
you. So it was really interesting that last week when we were doing the meditation in the beginning, what came up for me was removing obstacles and the finding things that needed to go. And I don't know if that was what made me think of it. I think I'd been thinking about it for a while, but the job that I've had for the last little while, it's a long drive. Like every day, it's almost 2 hours home. And it was sucking the life out of me. Yeah,
Wow.
from North Vancouver, Kathy, all the way into Coquitlam.
Oh.
Over the ironworkers. Like it was just,
I
it was
couldn't
nasty.
do it. No.
No, I mean, I did it for like what, 8, 9 months or something, and it just was
Mhm.
sucking the life out of me. Like I get home, I have to get up at 4 to get there on time, and then my hours were short, but then the drive was not. So it was just, I felt like it was taking more from me than it was giving me. Right?
Mhm.
Pay was nice. I got a nice raise when I joined, and yes, I took a pay decrease to take this new job, but I'm getting my life back. Like I want to
And
go
you
to
have
the gym after work.
expressed, yeah, a little bit of
Yeah.
unhappiness. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I
So
feel
what's the
amazing.
new job?
Somebody who works there. In fact, they gave me a good reference. So that was part of why I got the interview in the first place. So that's pretty cool.
You're gonna make up the reduction in pay with your gas, maintenance, time, all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
And I'll have more creativity left for me at the end of the day. So the shit that's coming out of my brain in the next year, you guys watch out.
Thanks.
I've
I'm
already
scared.
had my $1 million idea for the year that I'm going to start working on. So I'm pretty excited.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Atta girl.
Yay.
Go, Jess.
Whoop, whoop.
So, Greg, what's so good for you this year? You said, "Oh, great, the year's starting off great." So,
Well, I started to finally do some of the work in the book. Your workbook is one. I've been doing more of it and really using it, your life planning book, as a active document. And I mean, I was always doing planning before, but I think working in the notebook religiously, and also listening to the morning and evening meditation, where you are visualizing the day and reviewing the day, has made a big difference to me. Beginning to have some epiphanies through doing that, about myself and about what I want to do, and some of the things that I haven't been doing that I need to be doing or should be doing to make my goals happen. I was also listening to some of the I listened to some of these sessions that we have, and I realized just how poorly I listen.
what was that? I didn't hear. No, I'm just kidding.
You're saying one thing, and I'm trying to create deductive pictures in my mind of what I think you're saying and trying to understand it. And it's really not on point with what you're saying quite often. And then when I go back and listen, I said, that's not what he was saying. If I don't listen, I miss the lesson.
Yeah. So, a couple things that you mentioned there. The big trap, Le Grand Trap, that we have to avoid. And I'm glad you mentioned it because I fall into this trap too. And that is understanding. In other words, we think if we understand something, that's the point, right? But actually, understanding is not the point. Understanding is off point. It's the doing that's important. So now you're getting results because you're doing it, right? You're listening to the morning meditation, evening meditation, working in the workbook, right? So now you're getting results. So to me, it's exactly the same as going to the gym. you can get a medical degree learning all about how the muscles and the blood pressure and the hormones and all of that stuff works. And this is why when you do this repeated, weight bearing exercises, your muscles tend to grow, and you can learn all of that stuff. It's not going to have any effect on your body, right? It's not going to build any muscles. But the person that goes to the gym and just blindly, does the reps, does the exercise, they're going to build, the muscle, right? So that idea, which we all fall into, and I may be the worst one, that you mentioned about, thinking, oh, okay, I understand what he's doing, right? Actually, trying to understand is a diversion. And I've seen you do it a lot, Greg, and I do it all the time too. And like I say, that's why it's tricky. And that's why watching the recordings is such a great thing, because you can really get into it, and you can, play it back and listen to it and stop it and reverse it and play it again and catch it, because I think this idea of trying to understand something it's such a part of our nature, right, that we just do it automatically. So if I tell you a story, or you tell me a story, because it works both ways, then what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand the story, right? And I use this example a lot. As a matter of fact, I was up at the University of Victoria the other day, and I was talking to this person up there, and he was saying, well, speaking and thinking are the same thing. So I said, well, they're related, but they're not exactly the same thing. He says, no, they're the same thing. When you speak, it causes you to think, right? So I said, okay, I can give you one word. And we were in a room, like there was 100 people in the room, right? And I said, I could say one word right now, and it would trigger a different thought in everybody's head. So how does that relate to what you just said about thinking and speaking are related? If I can speak one word and everybody has a different thought, obviously, they're not, they are related, but it isn't like, oh, this word is going to make you think this thought, right? And the word I used was dog, right? I said, think of a dog. Everybody thinks of a different dog, So, so that's understanding, right? It's like if I say think of a dog, I'm thinking of a dog right now. Everybody think of a dog. People go, yeah, okay, I understand. I know what a dog is. I'm thinking of a dog. Well, you're thinking of a different dog. You're not thinking of what I'm thinking of, right? And so that's what happens all the time. Like when I say, or when anybody says, it's not just me, it's anybody. But if I give an example, of something, and you kind of go, okay, I understand what he's saying. I get that, Maybe you've missed it. Maybe you missed the point, right? And depending on the context and depending on what the point is, it might be an important thing that we miss, right? So that's why the virtue of re-listening and studying these videos is so important, right? Because you go, oh, hey, I didn't understand that, last time, right? It's kind of like watching a movie, right? I used to know these actors, and I remember one of them, this was like years ago when I was, 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? And somebody said, yeah, if I like a movie, I'll go to see it 3-4 times. And I remember thinking, what? What are you talking about 3 or 4 times? What's the point? You've seen it already, right? Why go see it again? Well, of course, there's a big difference, right? You go to see a movie 3, 4 times, you get so much more out of it, so much more nuance, I mean, lots of times the first time you see a movie, all you're looking for is like who done it, who's the killer, right? So at the end of the movie you find out who done it, and you kind of go, okay, well, I understand that. But then maybe the next time you go through, you're looking for the character, you're looking for the backstory, you're looking for the nuances and the clues, like Sherlock Holmes. What was it that he noticed that led him to find the killer, right? He saw something other people didn't see, So, so the value of iteration, right? Doing something over and over and over again. It's like, you can imagine a golfer going for a golf lesson, and the pro teaches him how to use all 14 clubs. And he says, well, I guess I don't need any more lessons now. I know how to use each club. Well, of course, it's ridiculous, right? I mean, you can practice with one club every day for an hour, and every time you pick up the club, you'll learn something new. So it's kind of like that with everything, right? Including this, this stuff that we're covering here. And of course, getting back to the weightlifting again, that's really what we're doing. We're changing our brain. We tend to forget that, right? So understanding something, if you understand something, really what you're doing is your thinking is going down the same track it went down before. But it's only by thinking about it, focusing on it, and trying different things, maybe experimenting with it a little bit, you get your thinking to go down a different track, right? And then when it does that routinely, then it's like, oh, hey, now my thinking is different. Maybe my personality is different now too, My understanding is different. My memories are different. Right? I think of the past situation and go, oh, it looks different now because I understand it differently, right? So, yeah. So understanding, thinking that we understand something, that can be a real trap, right?
I mean, you sent that YouTube video, which I watched, which was a TED Talk. A TED Talk where the gentleman was talking about overlaying positive thoughts on negative thoughts, how we notice negative thoughts more, we remember negative thoughts more, or criticisms more than we remember compliments, for example. So someone says you're great, you're great, you're super, you're wonderful, and your hair's not right, or your nose is too big, or whatever, and all you remember is your nose is too big, or your hair's not right, right? So you selectively grab that, and because your fight or flight kind of instincts to look for problems, which we were talking about last time a little bit, that becomes your focus. And you do that often enough, and before you know it, that's your life is looking at those negatives. And
yeah.
I thought that
that
was retraining the brain.
Yeah, exactly. I think Liza Minnelli, I heard her one day talking, and she said, she could be performing on stage in front of, a couple thousand people. And everybody could be, smiling and laughing and applauding. And she said she could see one person in the audience who was like bored. And she would feel terrible. Oh, that person doesn't like what I'm doing. So, I mean, thank goodness I'm not the only one that does that, right? How are you doing with your weight loss plans, you guys? You doing good?
Yeah, I lost 5 pounds this week.
Good for you.
Mm.
That was a big.
Naomi?
shift.
Well, I shifted my strategy a little bit to quality of sleep. And I have found out that, sugar and flour are enemies of sleep. So for the whole week, now I'm on my 8th day with no sugar and flour. Like, for example, I do eat ketchup that has sugar in it, or peanut butter, Jiffy peanut butter has sugar in it. So I'm not a Nazi about it, but that has really helped my joints. I feel better. And if I can continue that, then I can add more to it. I'm sleeping better, which helps health and weight loss. So I'm more successful in my little strategy shift.
Good.
So
Good. Good for you. So, have you lost weight or not?
yeah, well, I had gained a little, and then now I'm back down. So it's probably even to when I started, but
But you're more conscious, right?
oh yeah, oh
Which
for
is
sure.
the idea, basically. Is
Mhm.
to
Yep.
eat more consciously, right?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, if you eat more greens and if you eat more of that, that produces better sleep or enables better sleep. I
oh,
mean,
that's
I've done
good.
a little experiment. So yeah, so that also helps health, helps weight, all of that. So it just starting there is at the core at that point seems to be more successful to me than starting just at the weight amount. I weigh X pounds. I mean, I've
Yeah. No,
never
that's
been
good.
successful there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's great. Um, Jessica, what about you?
I've maintained, which is good. I was fluctuating for a while. I'd go up and then I'd lose, and I'd go up and then I'd lose. But I did find that I was going up when I wasn't paying attention, right? When I was just kind of going, oh, well, I'm just going to eat it because I want it. And then, to actively, counter that, I was being more conscious and being more careful and getting back to my, normal foods that I know work well for me. So the idea of the conscious eating definitely helps. It's just me getting into a habit of doing that more regularly than the unconscious eating. So, but part of this new job is going to be me going to the gym as well because it's right there and I'm excited about it. So we'll see what happens. I'm excited about, for me, I find that when I get back into exercising on a regular basis, the food seems to naturally follow. So for me, it's like I just got to get to the gym, and I've had so many things in my way. It's like the universe is testing me. Do you really? Do you really? Because let's throw another obstacle in your way and see if you come out the other side and you still want it. And it's like, oh, just stop it. So yeah, new job, and when I get rid of this stupid cold I've had for the last week, the gym is on my target, and I know that that's going to help me with my food as well. Oh, he's writing something down. I said something. I'm in trouble. Go ahead, lecture
You're in
me.
trouble now. You're in trouble now.
Can we guess? Should we all guess? No, just joking.
No, actually, it had nothing to do with you.
Oh, okay, good.
It was
Oh,
just I was
I
thinking
was-
of something. So
Okay.
you're safe. You're safe. Kathy,
So
what about you?
I haven't figured out. I haven't figured out Anthony's mind yet. I don't know if I ever will. So sometimes I like to guess.
Well, if you
What
ever
did
do,
he-
let me
What did he
know.
click on there?
If you ever figure it out, tell me what it is, because I can't figure it out either. What about you, Kathy? Have you tried that conscious eating business?
I'll just share with you guys that I have had issues with like sort of disordered eating and weight up and down like basically my whole life. So I give up on I will never consciously try to lose weight again because all it's led to is me getting bigger. So I'm not focusing on losing weight.
Well, how about gaining weight? How much weight have you gained?
No, I'm not talking about that either.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
I want to be a healthier person, but it's not going to have anything to do with the scale.
Right.
So it's just going to be about adding and not taking away anything. It's adding. So adding more vegetables, adding more low processed foods, that kind of thing. So it'll be about adding, not taking away. So yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. You don't have to lose weight. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I was just,
No.
and you haven't really talked about it. Like I think all of us have talked about having a goal of losing some weight, whereas you haven't.
Yeah,
I think
it's
so.
not my goal. It's not my goal. So
But I would just
Yeah.
I would just give you some feedback on what I saw when you were talking there, and you kind of remind me of what I saw in myself when I first thought about losing some weight. was because Greg was talking about it, and Jess was talking about it, and Naomi was talking about it, and I kind of went, oh, geez, I guess I got to talk about it then, because here I am leading this group, and people are going to expect me to have some information about it, right? Which I didn't have. And I was like, oh man, because I was exactly the same as you. Just the idea of thinking about losing weight was like a big negative. Oh no, not again. What a bummer that would be to try and do that, So that's what I
Yeah.
saw in you. So think about that because, it doesn't have to be a negative thing, right?
No, I
Especially-
want it to be positive, and I don't
Yeah.
I don't want to step on the scale and have that dictate how my day's gonna go, right? Which is how that's happened to me in the past, and how I feel about myself and all that kind of stuff. There's a whole bunch of stuff wrapped up in it, so I just don't go there anymore.
Okay. Well, that's a great point, and I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
Because that's what I was going to talk about in terms of kind of a theme for today, right? Do you guys know what a fractal have you heard the term fractal before? Greg?
I have heard it. I'm trying to think. I think a fractal is part of atomic structure, right? So
I don't know. I don't think so, but I mean, it could be. Naomi, have you heard about it?
it's not even, it's
I've heard the word, but I couldn't define it.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
clueless.
Well, sorry, Kathy, you were going to say?
I said I'm clueless. No idea.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what it is, at least from my perspective, my thought about it, is that when all of you, I'm sure, have seen these before, right? I had intended, because I was thinking about this week, and I was going to go online and find some pictures, to illustrate it, but I just didn't get to it. But you've probably seen these before, where you see like a close-up of something, right? Like sometimes you see and it'll say, what is this picture? What's this picture, right? And you look at it and it's like, oh, it looks like a forest, right? Like it looks like a forest of trees taken from an aircraft or something like that, right? And then you look at the caption to say what the picture is, and it's a picture of like moss. Something like that, right? You understand what I'm saying, Greg?
Yeah.
So, or you look at like, ripples on a beach. The water runs down and it makes these little ripples in the sand, right? So after the tide goes out, you look at the sand, and it's got these little ripples on it, and you can see, oh, okay, that's because there was water flowing there, and the grains of sand got piled up in that pattern by the current, right? So the idea then, as far as I understand, with this fractal, and there's a great thing called a Mandelbrot set. I'll find a link to it online, and I'll send it to you. So what it is I think Mandelbrot, is the scientist's name who came up with it. And what it is a mathematical formula, right? And so the idea behind it is whatever pattern it might be, whether it's ripples on the beach or something growing that looks like a tree and it's actually moss, something like that. The idea is that this pattern, and it's always a pattern of nature, some form of nature, I think, it just repeats at different scales, right? Like you look at it 100 times bigger, it's the same pattern. 100 times bigger, same pattern, And so the fractal, I'm not sure where the word fractal came from, but It might be the formula, you get this mathematical formula, and it just repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats and repeats. And as it gets bigger, then you recognize, oh, this is what happens with trees, right? Like a tree is kind of a fractal, right? Like if you look at an apple orchard, for example, you have let's say you have 100 apple trees in the orchard, right? Well, all of those trees look similar. It's the same pattern. You look at them and you can see, oh, they're all apple trees, right? Now, of course, when you look at each individual tree, they're all unique, right? They're all different because they're living things and the branches get broken and stuff like that. So each tree might be a little bit unique. But generally speaking, it's the same pattern, right? So that's this idea of a fractal, that a pattern that just repeats, right? And so I've been thinking lately about fractal thinking, because what I'm noticing is that the patterns of thinking that I have, let's say, right? They just repeat all over the place. And so you've heard this expression before, perhaps, the way you do anything is the way you do everything, right? So to me, that's a kind of a reference to this idea of fractal thinking, right? And so there's all kinds of ways that we can recognize that, like, for example, if a person has a negative attitude, right? Oh, that's not going to work. Well, that's kind of like a fractal. In other words, anytime they approach a new project, their attitude might be, well, that's going to be a bummer. That's not going to work. I mean, that might work for other people, but it won't work for me. Well, that might be like a fractal. In other words, that's like a pattern of their thinking, which is going to repeat all through their life. You follow what I'm saying? So, yeah. So just one more thought here, Kathy, and then you can respond. So that's what I'm paying attention to lately, is this idea of what are the patterns I have, patterns of thinking, feeling, emotion, or expectation, or, whatever, that that are maybe causing me a problem that I can shift, change the pattern somehow, right? I mean, an accent, Arnold Schwarzenegger's German accent when he talks, I mean, that might be like a fractal, right? I mean, as soon as he opens his mouth, you say, oh, this guy's a native German speaker, right? And it covers everything that he says, right? Kathy?
I have said those very words myself. Oh, that might work for other people, but it won't work for me, because I have in my thinking, like, I'm too far gone, I'm too far into this hole, it just won't work for me. And that sets me up for not having success right off the bat.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all guilty of the same thing, right?
I don't think I'm the only one, but
Well, you may be the only one, but
I doubt it.
but I don't think so, So yeah, I mean, so one thing that I've done to try and shift that, right? Because I mean, if you think about that logically, right? This might work for other people, but it won't work for me. I mean, that's totally illogical if you analyze it, because how many other people do you know, right? And yet linguistically, like when you say, well, that'll work for somebody else, but it won't work for me. You could interpret that as saying, well, the other people have something going for them that I don't. In other words, I'm missing something, right? Which again is like, that's kind of a fractal thought too, right? oh, there's something missing in me. There's something wrong with me. There's something holding me back, right? So, so one way that if I catch myself doing something like that, I'll shift my words around, right? I'll just say, well, it might work for some people. Can I think of somebody that it would work for? And then what are they doing that I can copy, right? In other words, I can be one of those some people that it works for, perhaps. You know what I mean? Jessica, you were going to say something?
Two things. So one, it kind of makes me think of confirmation bias a little bit, like the way that you think is kind of becomes the result that you look for. And then as you were talking, I started thinking, oh, it's the bologna sandwiches in our lives. So referring back to your book.
That's right. No, that's exactly right. So I think, so this idea of fractal thinking, I mean, it's another way of saying, the metadata of our life, right? Like if, for example, one of the questions on that metadata sheet, and you've all got it, right? I sent it to you. You've got it, right?
I don't have it, but I'm sure it's there. I haven't seen it.
Can you save that in a PDF so I couldn't print it out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I can send you a PDF of it.
Thanks.
Well, I used it a couple weeks ago because I actually had it on the screen here. But anyway, let's say, for example, one of those statements, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do I feel that my life is on course? Or how much do I feel that my life is in the right place right now? Right? So you might say, well, 6. Well, what's that? That's a fractal. That's a pattern, So what we're doing, I believe, during this whole process here that we've been doing now for over a year, is we're trying to identify those little thinking patterns and then shift them around a little bit. So changing that little, in terms of the mathematics of the formula for the fractal, the Mandelbrot set, maybe just shifting one of those factors, rather than A times B times C times, D to the 12th or something. What about D to the 11th? Different thing, right? So changing one of those things. But here's my point. This is what I want to bring it back to. What I've noticed since November 1st, when I embarked on this conscious eating plan. And by the way, I weighed myself yesterday. I'm down 15.2 pounds now. Right? Even though it kind of goes up and down and up and down, it's generally, it's going down. Because I'm basically doing the same thing, which is like eating less, right? So here's what I believe is happening. And this is, I believe this is what happens to all of us, right? So we have 6 different areas of our lives that we're looking at, right? Physical, mental, spiritual, financial, family, and social. This is the Paul Meyer whole person concept, right? So each one of those areas, of course, it's going to affect every other area, right? I mean, if you have a bad day at work, you might start to feel bad and maybe overeat. You know what I mean? Because one area of your life is, it's sort of impinging on another area, right? Or you remember what it's like when you met Miss Wonderful or Mr. Wonderful? It's like, whoa, all of a sudden the sun shines, rain doesn't matter, right? Everything is perfect, remember? So it's like when any area of your life shifts or improves, or you have a goal in that area and you're reaching the goal. Not only do you feel great because you're reaching the goal, but everything else about your life shifts too. because your life is kind of fractal, right? So what I've noticed over the last 2.5 months, almost 3 months now, right? I started, I think, November 1st. So the last more or less 90 days of being on this conscious eating plan, that achieving my weight loss goal has given me such a huge rush on like a daily basis, because I have this plan that's working, right? It's like, yes, I mean, my clothes fit better. As a matter of fact, I was talking to my wife yesterday. I said, when I was in China, I think I bought 4 or 5 suits. Well, they're all too loose now. They're too loose, Lautrec, So I'm going to have them taken in, which is great, right? I mean, how great is that? You have to take your pants in because, now your pants are too loose. So, what I'm feeling is that my life now is better because I lost 15 pounds, right? But it's not just that I've lost 15 pounds, because I mean, losing 15 pounds, okay, that's nice, that's great. I lost 15 pounds, terrific, But it's more subtle than that. It's like I'm feeling so much more sort of confident and powerful and on purpose and lucky, and it's like it's this feeling of winning. It's sort of taken over a whole bunch of different areas of my life, Which, of course, makes perfect sense, because if you look at the opposite, your relationship breaks up. You lose your job. You get fired. Your whole life is going to turn dark, right? We've all experienced that, The relationship falls apart, whatever. You get fired, or, and it's like, ooh, now I can't focus on anything because, I just feel like, I feel like, my life isn't working. So who cares about sticking to a diet? Who cares about doing my homework? Who cares about updating my resume? I don't care about any of that stuff because she doesn't love me anymore. Whatever, right? So it's like, that's what I'm thinking at the moment, is that this fact that I have this winning pattern in one area of my life, which is the weight, it's affecting every other area of my life right now. Jessica, you had your hand up there?
Oh, I was just going to say, I've heard this referred to as a keystone goal. So it's like that one thing that when you achieve it, it seems to affect everything else. So yeah, it's something I've been searching for. Like, what is my keystone goal? What is that thing that's going to ripple through and affect everything else in my life? So
yeah, I don't think it's a keystone goal. I think it's a keystone attitude, or keystone kind of energy, right? I mean, you just achieved a big goal. You got a new job. That's huge, right?
Oh, and I know that it's going to make a lot of shifts in my life. That was the whole point, right? Is I knew that it was going to create a lifestyle that I wanted, right? And that was the whole point of it. So, yeah.
Any other comments on that, Greg, Naomi, Kathy?
Well, I was going to share what I was doing, or it changed for me this week. It started to make some progress with your, the weight loss method there, because I was trying to do it before, but it's very much the same thing I think you're doing. And I just kind of wandered on it, or you pointed to it a little bit. We were talking recently, and I think you pointed out, you said if you go after the weight loss, some of the other stuff might fall into line behind it, rather than going after other things first, and that maybe I wasn't having as much success go after the weight loss because I was in control. And one of the things I noticed when I was trying to not overeat or eat. I wasn't eating minimally like you talked about. I was eating, a normal portion size. I was trying not to eat as often and things like that. But when I came to it, I was not consciously trying to eat a small bite like you kind of talked about. And I realized it was just because I was unconsciously eating. I was doing other things, and so I would just go eat what I normally eat. And what I started to do was I started to stop and said, I've got to stop just for a minute to think about becoming conscious of what I'm doing. And I kind of created like a pros and cons list in my mind of eating that bite. If I was eating what I normally eat, it would be normal and kind of relatively enjoyable to eat. You have the normal thing. But I started saying, what will happen if I don't eat? And then all of a sudden I had all these benefits of not eating. For example, I could say, I'm going to get stronger, I'm going to lose weight, I'm going to, start reaching a goal. And I started thinking about, this is my moment of power. This is my moment of decision. This is my moment of power. And it was very much like this fractal that you're talking about. It's like, if I could do this one thing right now, I know the result of that one thing. Not eating that, a pound of fat is about the size of your hand. Spread over your body thinly. If you took it,
like a pound of butter or something like that.
Right, you take a pound of meat, it's about this big, right? You put it in a package, it's about that big. And I thought, well, every time you don't eat a meal, a calorie is about 3,500 calories. It's a pound. So, and about a serving or helping is probably about 500 calories in general. So it would be like a finger on your hand. So it's like, if I don't eat one meal, it's like that. 2 meals, 3 meals, 4 meals, 5 meals, you lose a pound. And, if you're 30 pounds overweight or 40 pounds overweight, do that X number of times and the weight will come off, right, mathematically. So one of the things I thought is, this is my moment of power. I can do this. Okay, and just by getting kind of psyched up, almost like you're going in for an interview or a presentation to a client or a sales presentation or whatever you might be doing, convincing the kid, kids convincing dad to stay up late, you kind of get psyched up to do it. And I thought, if I just stop for a second and go, this is my moment of power, this is my moment of power, this is my moment of power, and start stacking the list, just 5 seconds, just to start that little mantra. This is my moment of power. It became so powerful for me to say, well, of course, I'm not going to eat that. I said, I'll take a bite of the cake, because it's an easy decision at that moment. But the reason I was doing it was not just to lose that piece of a pound, but was to have a methodology to begin to approach winning at goals. Because if I can win at goals, I can put any goal in that place. It could be succeeding at work becomes make more calls. 10 calls equals that, 20 calls, 30 calls, 40 calls, 50 calls, new customer. If it relates to, prayer, it can be pray a little bit, whatever that is, to become a more spiritual person. It all is the scaffolding underneath the goal. To get the goal, you have to do the work of the goal.
Yeah.
If you do
that's right.
Goal, you'll never fail.
Yeah.
So it's just like a math formula. And that's what I was saying. But it's kind of that fractal that you're talking about. I said, if I can do one category in my life, I can do all the categories in my life. And so for me, that's why I didn't eat that one extra portion. I could eat half a portion and still be real. I was trying to eat as little as I needed to feel full. If that makes sense. Just so
that's absolutely right. I mean, I've noticed that too. Like, I can eat an apple now, and like that's a meal for me. Like, it's enough, right?
That's an example. I did that a couple of times. I grabbed 2 apples. I was like, grab 2 apples.
Exactly.
I played for the other time. I can play the whole thing if I need to get all the whys and all the benefits.
Yeah.
But I could eat an eighth of a piece of pizza and still get the flavor, or I can eat an apple or 3 apples if I'm really still hungry. Eat 4 apples in a little piece of pizza.
And if there's a worm in the apple, then you get a little bit of protein too. So
that's right.
I was watching something by Dean Graziosi, the other week. That he was doing some kind of, goal setting, change your life, motivational kind of talk, right? And he said something, and I think this is what he was referring to. And it was just kind of a throwaway line, right? It was a couple of words, but I noticed it because I was thinking about this idea of fractal thing, and feeling like now I'm more able to achieve my goals because I'm losing weight, right? And it's not the losing weight, it's the fact that, hey, I have something that's working here. I got this winning pattern going on in this area of my life, and it's coloring all the other areas of my life, right? And what he said was, I can't remember exactly what it was now, but it was something like he was talking about, setting goals and achieving goals and working hard and stuff like this. And he happened to mention that it's important to have goals and to achieve your goals. He said, even if your goal is to, brush your teeth twice a day, if you do that twice a day, your life will improve, And I thought, wow, that's right, So like achieving a goal has such a huge impact on your life, and it really doesn't matter what the goal is. Shine my shoes once a week. Okay, if that's the goal, because it's something that you can win at, right?
Well, it's kind of binary, right? It's a 0 or 1. I look at it like a binary digit, right? If not doing it is 0, doing it is 1. If you stack enough ones, then you got a goal.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And if you do enough of them.
Yeah. So like for me, one of the great insights that I found in my life was when I was quitting smoking, and I realized, never mind all the nicotine and the health and the habit stuff and all this other, all these other medical issues and all the rigmarole around smoking. What it comes down to is, if I can avoid putting this thing in my mouth and setting fire to it for 1 minute right now, like you said, my point of power, right? Right now, I can decide I'm not going to smoke for a minute. Well, that changed my life. That one idea, was like, I only have to do this for a minute. If I want to smoke in a minute, I can smoke if I choose to, but right now I'm just not going to smoke. And it's like, hey, that had a huge impact. And it's kind of like that with the conscious eating too. Like I'll say to myself sometimes, okay, I feel like eating something, but I don't want to eat, pasta or pizza or whatever. I'll just have an apple. I'll just make that choice right now. I'll just have an apple, And I eat the apple, and then I not only feel good because I achieved that goal of eating the apple, or at least avoiding the pizza, but I'm not hungry again for the next couple hours. I don't even think about food because, my stomach is settled because of the apple, right? So, yeah. So maybe that's a keystone. Maybe that's what you were referring to, Jessica, was that like that little thought, don't smoke for 1 minute.
Can I add one thing to that? I think one of the things that happen is we are habitual people, all of us. Our bodies and our minds are made to do habits so that we don't have to rethink. I don't think about whether or not I'm going to have a cup of coffee. I just get up a cup of coffee. I don't think about whether I'm going to sip a cup of coffee. My mind just does it. I breathe without thinking about it. But to break a habit, you have to be conscious of the moment of the habit when you do the thing. You say, that's what I say. But we don't do it because there's so many bad habits that we have. It's overwhelming. It's like, well, I don't know where to start. Kind of thing. It's like I stay up too late. I eat too much. I don't work, in the right time period. I don't manage my time right. You're like, got all these different things that are out of control. Okay. And I think the problem is that we don't know where to start. Maybe we take some efforts at starting on one and then go to the other one. And, it was interesting to kind of go after one point of, power and success, and then say, if I can get this one thing to work, I can always do the other ones. I just put them in line behind the other one. I'll do this one, then I'll do this one, then I'll do this one, and I'll start unremoving the habits. I think Phil was talking about, he had some habits he wanted to change in the last thing. And I thought, I have habits I want to change too. And none of them are egregious, but collectively, it's a lot of weight. You're not going in the direction that you want to go.
Right.
And so to start to remove the habits one by one, or at least pick one. It doesn't have to be that. I was like, I'd like to be stronger. I just went to the gym with my son this morning, and I was there. Everybody was in great shape at the gym, other than me. And a few other people. But, if you go to the gym, everybody's in great shape, and it's embarrassing to be there and not be as fit as everybody else. But these other people were ripped, and they had lives that I was like, man, I know it affects the rest of their whole life. It's
Don't
like,
compare yourself. Don't compare yourself to the people in the gym. Compare yourself to the people on the sidewalk outside that are, overweight.
But
Well, I'm not one of those people.
My point was I didn't want to just lose weight. I also want to get in shape.
Yeah, exactly.
I want better health. I want three things. I want in shape. I want, physically, I want to gain more muscle so I can move and do more things that I want to do. I want to lose weight, and then I also want to get healthier from eating good food. My organs to be better off. I don't want my body fighting to repair itself because I'm eating,
Right.
Wrong things, chemicals or processed food. So I have three goals. It's not just one. I want to improve or transform myself over time. And so I'm going, it's not enough just to lose weight. I don't want to be weak and light. I want to be, back. I want to move my clock back biologically, if I can, to repair some of the things I've done through just really bad habits. We're so busy doing other stuff. Before you know it, you grab a granola bar. It's processed food. It's got, fructose sugar in it. Attaches to your liver. When you do that in inordinate amounts, you do that often enough, eating, processed food, and you'll have health problems.
Yeah. And it's like, a granola bar is like nothing, right?
Yeah.
But it's kind of a symptom, talking about fractals again, it's kind of a symptom of doing something unconsciously. And like, you don't just eat one granola bar, you might have one granola bar a day for 17 years, right? And,
Right.
then in that length of time, it adds up, right? So what I was just thinking here when you were talking about going to the gym, I wonder what 15 pounds feels like. I'm going to have to, maybe I'll go to the store and pick up three 5-pound bags of sugar, right? Just to see how much it weighs, because that's how much weight I've lost, right, in the last 3 months.
Well, carry it. Take a 15-pound weight and carry it around for the afternoon.
Well, yeah, exactly. And I'm sure it would be substantial, right? If I were to carry a 15-pound weight around for a while, my arms would hurt, right? So that would have, obviously that's going to have an effect on your whole body, right?
Well, your whole attitude. If you carry 50 pounds around, go pick up a 50-pound bag and carry it around all afternoon and see how you feel. It's going to affect your attitude. I'm amazed that people that are, sometimes you get people that are very, very big. I don't know how, I know a lot of them are jolly and fun. I'm like, how can a person be so, 200 pounds overweight, 400 pounds overweight, and have such a good attitude? They're really, quite heroic.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Well, if they weren't that overweight, maybe they'd be, writing a book a month or something, So, so here's something related. Getting back on track, about changing our life, right? I have a worksheet that's called my personal plan of, the negatives, right?
The personal programming plan of action, maybe?
That could be it. Yeah, what does that say?
Here are some specific things about my life that I want to change. So then it's got a list of questions. Some specific positive attitudes I will imprint into my conscious are. Some specific negative attitudes I will systematically eliminate are.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was thinking of. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you look at chapter if you look at looking at the Bible here, here's what I was talking about. So this is changing the past, right? This is chapter 17. So, what I say in here, and I think I say it like in one line or something. Okay, so here I'll just read this. Our emotional wounds need to be healed if we are to make any progress toward living a fulfilling life. How do we do this? Well, first we need to identify our emotional wounds. Second, we need to embark on a program of systematically healing them. The key word here is systematically. We need to have a system, a program, to heal ourselves step by step. Right? So that's what I'm thinking of. So what I would say is look at some of your past wounds. You know, a relationship that broke down, a divorce, you know, going bankrupt, getting fired from a job, you know, any one of those things that normally you don't want to look at, right? Because it's just, ooh, it hurts to even think about it. But take one of those and spend some time reframing it. You know, looking at it from a different angle. You know, you can ask yourself some questions like, for example, I was thinking the other day, hang on one second. Oh, here it is here.
What section are you in, Anthony? I'm not familiar.
That's chapter 17,
Of which book?
Mind, Time, and Power.
Oh, got it. Okay. So I did miss that.
So what I was referring to was healing your past wounds, right? Yeah, here you go. Using your past failures as a case study, right? In other words, take one of your past failures, something that hurt, you know, that like you messed it up, and you know it impacted your self-image, your self-esteem, perhaps. You don't want to look at it, you know, because it's like, ooh, whenever I think about that, you know, it just bums me out, right? Like I say, getting a divorce, you know, getting fired, you know, some heavy-duty negative in your life that you don't want to look at. You know, you don't want to think about it. You don't want to go there, right? Remember we talked before about going there. Don't go there, right? So what I'm saying is go there. So use your past failures as a case study. Ask yourself a couple of questions. Number one, what did I do right here? You know, even though I think of it as a failure, did I actually win something in that situation? Maybe, you know, maybe the relationship broke down, but hey, you know, were there any positives there? Right? What did I do right? And then look at what assumptions did I make about this? Did I make some assumptions that, in retrospect, looking back now from, you know, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years later, I have a lot more awareness now. Did I assume something in that situation that actually wasn't really helpful? If I hadn't have assumed that, it might have been totally different. Likewise, what did I ignore? Were there some signals going in that I didn't pay any attention to? What did I fail to foresee? Right? So what I'm saying is, pick one of your past failures, one of your past wounds, and look at it as though you're talking to somebody else about their thing, and it just happens to be the same as yours, you know. In other words, look at yourself in the past as though you're looking at somebody else, right? And see if you can't shift it around a little bit and find something positive in it, right? And that person who shall remain nameless, you know, did he or she actually give you some benefits that you don't give them credit for? For example, just try and reframe it. And so what I've found, this is the payoff. This is the reason that we do this. Because, again, fractal thinking, right? That negative thing in your past that you think you forgot about, or you don't pay any attention to, or you just don't want to go there, so you don't go there, you forgot about it. Oh, I don't think about that anymore.
Sorry.
Well, actually, you do think about it. You're forgiven, Naomi.
Couldn't hit the mute button fast.
That's okay. Because it's there. It's always there, right? And it's going to come back and it's going to haunt you. And I think haunting is probably a good term. It's going to come back and haunt you at odd moments. But if you can switch it, reframe it, then it's not the same as it was before. It's better, You might still have a scar, but you don't have an open wound, right? So I think it's very similar to what I was referring to a minute ago, like the fractal thinking, You have one area of your life where you're winning. It's going to affect everything else in your whole life. And so I think it's the same with these past negatives, the past wounds, the past hurts. If you can look at it detached, not associated, I would say, imagine that you're looking at yourself, or look at the situation as though you're standing across the street, you're watching it happen, right? So you're not directly involved in it. You're kind of analyzing it from a bit of a distance. And just see if you can shift it, reframe it, come up with some other language to describe it, And notice the effect it has. In my experience, it has a huge effect. Because now that negative thing that's been weighing you down for years, perhaps, it's not there anymore. Robert Bly, the American poet, he says, we all have this long black bag that we drag behind us, right? We forget it's there, but it weighs us down. It's all our wounds and our, hurts and all these things that we have from our past. We think that nobody notices, right? But everybody can see, oh, he's dragging all this, he's dragging this huge black bag behind him, right? So try that this week. Pick one, and just say, can I shift it? How can I turn it into a learning lesson for myself? Like I say, treat it as a case study, and see if you can't find something positive about it, and see what the effect is.
Can I make a comment?
No.
Go ahead.
Yes,
Greg,
you
go
can.
ahead.
Yes, you can.
So this page here that you're talking about, okay, I think the specific plan of action. This one here in the workbook,
Yep.
My personal programming plan of action page.
Right. Okay, yeah, that might be the one I'm thinking of. For some reason, I don't have the workbook here in front of me. Usually
I was just looking at it. So, and I just wrote down in my notes here, but this is chapter 14, 13, 16, 17, and 20. So each of these is from a different chapter in your book.
Yep.
It's interesting. And I didn't realize that, but I was like, because I wasn't following when we said we would do it, but because I wanted to do some of the work of going through, so that I didn't correlate it to the book. Because as I'm working through the notebook, I've been working through your book, and some of the things I don't know where to put things or where to find them. That are some of the things that are referred to in the book, but I think are good to do. So, for example, reworking negative habits. There's not really a place. There's not a page. It's just about negative habits, but it's a question in your book that kind of hinges to it. So, there's a lot there. There's 5 chapters that are covered in that one page. And
Yeah,
so
when I put that page together, I just sort of did it off the top of my head. I didn't really think about, which chapter might have been correlated to any one of those things. It's just that when I was thinking about it, it's like, okay, if we can get rid of a negative and we can add a positive, then that's going to create a shift in your life, right?
Correct.
So that's all I was thinking about. Is like changing a negative attitude, reframing a negative experience, adding another positive success to the past successes list. Just kind of change the weighting of the past and the future, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. When I started working through the workbook, it's kind of like, there's a saying, I guess, everything has a place, and everything should be in its place, and everything has a place in your mind. But as you're working through the concepts in your book and trying to change your life, you can't eat a pizza all in one bite. You got to take it one step at a time, right? And so the question is, how do you go after these different areas to try to get a different life? It's like moving a big ship. Moving a big ship is not like moving a little boat, right? I mean, you have to do several things at once, or the crew's got to all kind of work together.
Right.
And so each area of your life starts to, I think you said in your morning meditation, for example, that thing, which I put that on my phone. I put it on my phone and I have a little shortcut, but I play it each morning. So I play your recording. I keep it on a notepad on my phone. But I play your morning meditation and your nighttime, and they're really very helpful to imagine kind of changing your attitude during the day. But also, as it was going through the workbook, starting to work on different aspects of your personality or part of your life does start to move the boat a bit.
It moves the needle, right? It's not.
Yeah,
so, I mean, the idea of moving a big ship, it's not really a big ship. It's like a fleet of small boats. We think it's a big ship, the past, all these past negatives. It seems like it's like, Robert Bly says, a black bag, a big black bag. But that's what I was trying to get to. So thanks for saying that. If you think of each of those, past negative wounds as like, it's just a small thing, right? It's just a small boat. You can move the small one. So fix one, right? Kind of reminds me of that story. You've probably heard this before. This guy's walking along the beach, right? And he sees this kid, and he's picking something up and throwing it into the ocean. Have you heard this?
No. Go ahead.
So the guy says to the kid, "What are you doing?" He says, "Well, I'm throwing these starfish back into the ocean so they don't dry out and die in the sun, right? Because it's really hot here on the beach." So the guy says to him, "Well, that's kind of silly. I mean, look at all the starfish. There's thousands of starfish here. You're not really doing anything to help the starfish." And the kid picks a starfish up and throws it in the water, and he said, "I helped that one." So again, it's like, just take one, painful past experience that when you ever think about it, you kind of go, ooh, I don't want to think about that. Choose that one, right? And just, think about it, meditate on it. How can I, like I say, what wins were in this experience that I forgot about because I've labeled it a negative experience, so I don't look at those things anymore. But there were parts of that were big wins, right?
I mean, I think there's a book by Martin Seligman. He was a great psychologist, and he wrote a book called Learned Helplessness. Right. And I think that people learn to be helpless. People learn to give up. Life is hard. There's a lot of challenges and things that hit us that we're not expecting. But as we hit them, I think it's very easy for depression to happen. I think it's very easy for people to learn to be helpless. Please help me, give me something. I mean, when's the ship going to come in? When am I going to hit the lotto? It's going to be a long time before if the only chance to win in life is to win the lotto, you're going to have a lot of disappointed people waiting for that. And so I think you have to kind of lift yourself up by your bootstrap, but it's hard. I think people get discouraged and they don't go after their life because they don't think they can move the ship. Like they try and they get nowhere, and they try and they get nowhere. And so I've seen it in different forms of depression, negativity, bad attitude. Those are some of the things that you're talking about in the magic principle. Motivation, attitude is one of them. Imagination. A lot of people stop imagining anything better. Is another part that is in your book. You talk about magic.
Yeah, well, the big insight that I had, and we've talked about it numerous times, but I'll just mention it again. The past is still there. It hasn't gone anywhere, Like one of the things that we believe is, hey, the past is gone, forget about the past, and just look to the future, Well, when you realize, hey, we're connected equally to the past and the future, right? So that past is still there. Like those negative things that we think, oh, that's 15 years ago, that relationship that broke down, it doesn't affect me anymore. I've moved past it. Well, actually, you haven't moved past it. Or at least perhaps you haven't moved past it, So that's what I'm saying. Go back there and play with it, heal it, try and find some way that it's positive, right?
Well, that's why a lot of when I was getting some headway out of the workbook, as I started to work with it, I started taking some of these weights off of me. I'm carrying them all the crap with me.
Exactly.
Carrying the negative attitudes and carrying the depression and carrying these different things. And I've worked through depression. I had depression earlier in life, and I had severe depression because of a couple of life events that were big that happened. And I worked out of those. So I'm neutral. I've kind of neutralized that in my life. But I think it can be chronic. It can come back is one thing. And I think that you can carry the baggage of some of those feelings. Things can spark it or touch it, or you don't try different aspects of your life. You get tired of goal planning, or it doesn't seem to be working in these different areas. And so for me, it's kind of interesting when you start grabbing one little piece and fixing a ship.
Yeah.
It's exciting.
It's kind of like, attacking your car, deciding, okay, I'm going to get rid of this piece of rust on my car,
Right.
And maybe take it to the body shop and have them kind of, sand it out and repaint it and prime it and everything else. And then now the rust is gone, right? So, because
I put on my list. One thing I put on my list to buy toothpaste was my thing. Like shine your shoe, I think in your book. I put buy toothpaste, and I went and did it, and I checked it out. It was
no,
my
that's
first.
good. That's good, right? It's like not smoking for a minute. It's like you achieve a goal. And the funny thing is, it sounds silly, but when you buy the toothpaste, you feel better, right?
So I was like, oh, I can do something. So I did. Try to follow the thing, but it works. You buy toothpaste. You buy toothpaste. You buy you fix your shoes. You fix your car. Before you know, you start getting back on the bandwagon again and saying, hey, wow, that is nice. The car's clean now. It's clean and it's washed. It's clean inside, outside. I actually do my cars for my daughter and my wife and stuff on different nights of the week now. And it's like before they know it, they don't get in the car and they're like, hey, this guy washes my, they kind of like me a little more probably.
Yeah. So it's like that with your life, right? So like when we think about goals, if I say set a goal, what's one of your goals, right? Well, generally we tend to think of the future. Oh, I have the goal to do this, next week, right? Well, what about having a goal of cleaning up one of your past wounds? That's a goal, right? I'm going to heal this past hurt here, this past relationship or this situation that I've always considered to be such a failure, I'm going to change it into a win. Do that. It'll make a huge difference,
Change it into, like you said, change it into something that you're grateful for.
Yes.
You're grateful that it happened because you grew stronger. You learned about yourself. You really maybe become empathetic to the other person, that they weren't raised the way you were, so they were a jerk or they were a difficult person, and you got mad. But now you're no longer mad. You're like, hey, he came from a tough background.
Well, exactly. Do you remember when I talked about when I first discovered that my mind was a time machine, right? Thinking was time traveling. Mm-hmm. And the way I did that was because I was doing this meditation exercise. I was taking this mind power course and so I was visualizing myself achieving my goals and things like that, moving ahead, moving toward the future that I want, right? And then I realized one day that I couldn't remember anything positive about my past. The past was just, I'd kind of wiped it clean because I had such negative feelings about my past that I just stopped thinking about it. Didn't think of my parents, didn't think of the church, didn't think of school, didn't think of these past relationships, just avoided thinking about them, right? And then so when I decided to find some positives in my past, it took me a while to do it. Like I was meditating, and as I can remember, it took me about a week of thinking about my childhood, trying to remember something positive. And it took about a week, and I remembered playing baseball. Have I told you this story before? I think
Yes.
I have. It's part of my one-man play, I think, anyway.
Yeah, that's what it was. That's what it was.
But I think I've talked about it before. So it was like, oh yeah, baseball. I forgot about that. Well, it's because I had painted my whole past with this one brush, right? My childhood was a bummer. Well, that filtered out all of the positive memories I had from my past. So I started to go back and systematically remember more and more positives. And so the first memory I had was playing baseball. And then I went back to the baseball game and I remembered, okay, who was I playing baseball with and who were my friends and what did I do before the baseball game and what did I do after the baseball game and all that. And then I realized, hey, I got a huge amount of positive memories from that time in my life, but I totally forgot about them all because I painted my childhood as negative.
Right.
So suddenly there was like, oh, there was all kinds of positives there. I mean, my childhood actually was great. I had one or two negative things which kind of bummed me out so much that I stopped feeling positive about my past. So it's kind of the same thing. If you look at a past relationship and you think, oh, that was a bummer, that was a mistake to get involved with that person, right?
Right.
Well, look at it again. There might be all kinds of positives there. Thanks, Kathy.
That's interesting. I was listening to the last week's session. I was thinking a little bit about creating a trophy room in my mind.
Yeah.
Great.
That's a great
and
one.
Going to visit it, like traveling there to go visit the room with my trophies in it. But it's interesting that you say that with feelings now, because the other thing would be interesting to go visit a room with feelings. Feelings of joy, feelings of happiness, humor, enlightenment, whatever those are, different feelings too. That's one of your pages in your workbook. But to work on these things. I mean, we just don't normally do this stuff. I don't think most people do any of this.
Well, I'll tell you something.
Themselves.
I don't know anybody. Now, I've been doing this for 40 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody else that talks about this. Now, there must be people that do talk about it. I just don't know any. They certainly haven't. They certainly don't talk about it the way I do, which is like you can go back into the past because the past is still there, And the way that I think about it is like if I take a train from New York City to San Francisco, well, I might be in Chicago now. That's my present. Well, New York is still there. It hasn't gone anywhere, right? So that's how I think about the past. The past is still there. I can go back and I can visit it any time, right? But for years, I didn't visit my childhood because I had painted it as a dark period in my life. Until I remembered that baseball game. And I probably wouldn't have remembered the baseball game except that I kept looking for it and looking for something positive. And as I say, as I remember, it took me about a week before I could remember anything positive. And now I think my childhood was fantastic, and it's a shame that I forgot about it for so long, So, so finding these positives in the past, in a sense, it's a byproduct of reframing the negatives,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah, I had someone I know that passed away, that today's their birthday. So it's interesting to think about going back and revisiting the pleasant moments in your mind, for example, that you had together, and look at that positively. But it's something you can do when you look at this concept of going back to a day in the past and revisit that memory, for example. So it's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if I ask you, for example, think about how was high school for you, like on a scale of 10. 10 being fantastic, 1 being a bummer.
I was very fortunate, so it was good.
Yeah, okay, so you have a good memory about that. But you can go back, and try and remember like one really fantastic day,
Mm-hmm.
and make that the thing that represents your high school years, right? There's a British detective. Her name is Vera. She's on the BBC. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the show or not, but anyway, she's great, I think. And so there's this one show that I was watching her, and she was talking to this young kid, right? And like he was a teenager, I think. And I can't remember the story, but it was something like, this guy's father was a serial killer or something like that. He killed a bunch of people, ended up in prison, whatever. And he abused this young kid, and so the kid had negative memories of his father, right? And so Vera said to him, "What's the best memory that you ever had of your dad? Was there a time? Was there a day that you did something and it was a great day?" And so the guy says, "Yeah, I remember one day we went for a drive and we went out and my dad took me down to the ocean and we went for a walk on the beach and we bought fish and chips and we had a great afternoon." And she says, "When you think of your dad, that's what you think of. Don't think about he's in jail and he killed people, whatever. Think about he took you for fish and chips, right?"
Right.
And so that's really profound, right?
That's fortifying. That's
Yeah.
interesting.
Think about any negative area of your life and try and find something super positive that represents it. And that's the thing that you label as that period in your life,
Yeah. I mean, to perform well in life, I mean, at work or, family or different places, I think you've got to, it's tough enough not, there can be challenges if you're not positive. If you're not in a good mood, if you're not a positive force, if you don't bring the joy,
Well, I've heard
stuff.
that all our wounds are self-inflicted.
Yeah, when you think of the inputs, I mean, when you think of our inner world, right? If we keep bringing crap into there, I mean,
Yeah, but I'm thinking of my coworker who's gonna do a celebration of life for her husband tomorrow. He committed suicide.
mhm.
So I just feel for her, how it would just be kind of a vortex that you go into that, oh, how do you
Yes.
come out of that? I feel for her.
Well, it might take her a while.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
it does. I mean, that's what,
I've
the
heard.
person I was talking about did that as a close family member.
Get some counseling for sure, That's
Yeah.
the first thing I would say. I mean, if you have a toothache, you go to a dentist, right?
Right.
And so something like that, find a psychologist, find a counselor, somebody that can help you work through it, right?
Mhm.
But something like that, I mean, it might take a year or more for her to even be able to think about it.
Mhm.
But I mean, I think that's a lot like other illnesses. I mean, one thing, it's an illness,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
any cancer or anything that can
Yeah.
develop with people. And I think that's, part of what we're talking about is mental mind control here.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. That's why I call it mind power. It's about taking a thought and realizing, oh, I don't want to think that thought. I'm going to think this one.
Right.
You
And
know?
Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, he wrote the book Man's Search for
Yeah.
Meaning, talks
I
about
have that book.
Auschwitz and the people that survived Auschwitz was horrible. I mean, there were people that ran into the fence
Oh yeah.
to get away from the horror that they were going through. I mean, you can't think of a more horrific environment. But the ones that survived were ones that found meaning in life. And it's certainly a battle or, a challenge. It's like a maze to
Well,
find your
yeah,
way.
you can create the meaning. That's the thing. I mean,
Hmm.
part of it is finding the meaning, and the other part is, hey, deciding on the meaning. I'm going to have it mean this, right? Um, yeah, so that's great. So this, thanks for this. This has been a great session. I mean, when we started, I didn't really have too much that I wanted to,
Hmm.
at least too much that I was conscious of, wanting to get across. But I think it was a great discussion. So
One point I got out of this is like a winning pattern supports the next winning pattern.
Yes.
and not even the next one, but all the other ones, like,
Hmm.
you have a win, like you buy toothpaste, you feel great, your whole life is better.
Hmm.
Well, and I
You can
think
stack them up.
But yeah,
I mean,
that's right. A winning pattern is great.
that wasn't my idea. That was Anthony's idea, by the way. He said kind of switch what you're working on this week. And he said try a
Mhm.
different one. He said try this one instead of that one,
Mm.
and then
Mhm.
by getting this one, I kind of see it like in my mind's eye, like the winning category in your life pulls the other ones with it. And we're saying in your morning meditation, it says the 6 areas of your life complement each other.
Yeah,
And
well,
Mhm.
I just had an image that might work. Let's say you had like 6 areas of life. You have 6 lights in your house, right?
yeah.
Well, you turn one of them on, all the other areas of the room are going to be lit up too, to some degree, right?
So I think they start to spread out, and I think it actually becomes easier to deal with the other areas. It's kind of
Yeah.
it's become easy to link it and say, well, I'll just do this like I did the other one. Like
Mhm.
I mean,
This trip, I'm planning this trip to England, right? And we're going to go to France and Germany too. And it's really coming together great. And I think part of it, part of the reason, this is going to sound weird, but I think part of the reason that I have such a good attitude about putting this trip together is because I'm losing weight.
yeah.
I mean, it sounds weird, right? But it's like, wait a second, if you think about it, you have this kind of holistic mind, this holistic personality. One part of it is like really positive. It's kind of pulling everything else ahead, like Naomi just said and Greg just said. So, yeah, it's fantastic. I had this idea like just before Christmas, and it was just a thought in my head, right? Wouldn't it be nice if, go to England and whatever, right? And so now it's been 6 weeks, right? 6 weeks later. Well, I suddenly realized this morning I've got 6 people now. 5 of them in England, 1 of them in Germany, who are helping me sort of put this thing together, right? And I've got speaking gigs in at least 2 different cities now, that I'm going to be able to do some like mind power speaking or training or something. So it's really coming together kind of amazingly, right? Kind of out of nothing, out of nowhere. Which is what we do, right? We create things out of nothing. So Jess just created a new job out of nothing.
I was watching Uri Geller. I was listening to Uri Geller on Coast to Coast. You know who Uri Geller is?
Yep.
He bends spoons with his mind. This is one of his.
What? Wow.
So he's able to. His story is quite phenomenal. But he was saying that the power of the mind to achieve anything was one of the key lessons he was talking about. This most recent Coast to Coast thing he just had a couple of days ago. I listened to, but he was talking about because there was another guy that called in and said he could do it too, and he said, "Well, there's a lot of people that can do it." And he said, but the key is, he said, don't. He said, what should I do with it? He said, don't worry about that. He said, instead, focus on your mind. And he said, focus on your goals and changing your life and changing other people's lives, which is kind of interesting. He said, that's the most important thing. He said, you can do anything that you can achieve, or you can achieve anything you can conceive. And he was going back to kind of thinking, grow rich, and
Oh, by the way, yeah, thanks. Sorry to butt in there, Greg. I have to go in a minute, but one of the things I'm doing this week is I'm redoing that Udemy course, right? Because I first put it together, I think, in like 2012 or something like that. And so I've started, so I just kind of updating the visuals and updating some of the audios because, you know, I just want to improve them, right? And so yesterday I was working on one of the videos, and it blew my mind. It was so good. It blew my mind, you know. I thought, man, I forgot that this course was so good, right?
It is good. It's
And
really
so I was, and it's funny because, like, I wrote it, right? But it's kind of like what we've talked about in several different ways here. We've talked about this already. That the words that I used when I put that course together, now they mean something different. Right? Like they have a deep, you know, kind of like a deeper meaning, right?
right.
Like, for example, in my book, I just read it from my book, you know, chapter 17, right? Go through your past, heal, you know, identify the wounds that you need to heal and heal them. That's one sentence. But think about that as a practice, right?
Huge.
It's huge, right? Heal this one, then heal that one, then reframe that one and reframe that one. It's like, whoa, you know? It's huge. So yeah, so I'd recommend that you go through that again, and you know, recommend it to your friends. Tell your friends about it. One of the things I'm thinking of doing is what I've done up until now. I've always considered that Udemy course kind of well, I call it the foundation, right? It's like it's the foundation course because it basically has everything in it. I mean, let's face it, everything we've done for the last 56 weeks, we've been basically talking about that course, right? Because the course is all about how to use the workbook and you know, changing your mind, changing your life, right? So so I always charge money for it. I have given it away on occasion, you know, to people as a kind of a sample, you know, a sample. And so what I've been toying with lately is maybe giving it away to people at no charge on the basis that if they go through it and they get something out of it, they send me a donation, right? Whatever they want to donate is fine. And as a matter of fact, I'll tell you something just between you and I here. I'm getting into doing some more business consulting, right? And I'm going to sell this Udemy course to some local companies, and I'm charging them $20,000 for it.
Good for you.
Believe it. It's worth it.
Same course, right? Same course,
Worth it.
$20,000. So, like, what's it worth? I mean, it's worth, you know, whatever you think it's worth, right? I mean, to me, it's worth, you know, my whole life, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks, you people. Thanks for being here. I wouldn't be here without you guys.
We're glad you're doing it.
That's the
I'm
truth.
Me too.
So,
Yeah. Ditto.
Yeah.
Ditto.
Yeah.
Really good.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
great.
Everybody have a nice week.
You too.
Have a
Yeah,
good
see you
one.
next time.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
now. For more information about this online community, to get your own copy of the book upon which this entire training series is based, either the ebook, the paperback, or the audiobook, go to mindtimeandpower.com, where you can also get a free copy of this Design Your Life workbook.